Hello and welcome to my show, Shuvra Deb with you, with me, your host, Shuvra Deb. In this show, I will be discussing mental health with the aim of raising mental health awareness in our community and in society as a whole. The genesis of the show is my own pivotal life-changing experience of being in a Category 5 hurricane back in 2017. That experience led me to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. I am hosting this show in order to let you know that you are not alone if something life-changing has happened to you from which you are struggling to heal. Shuvra Deb with you focuses on a range of topics relevant to mental health and to raising awareness of issues surrounding mental health. Hello everyone and welcome back to my show, Shuvra Deb with you. I hope you're all doing really well and looking after yourselves and each other. My topic for discussion with you today is self-care. Now, I have just returned from the most amazing trip to Costa Rica, where for one whole week I was totally immersed in the space of being at a retreat. The location of the retreat was Blue Spirit Costa Rica, on the Pacific side of the country, in the Guanacaste region near Nosara, famously known for its surfing culture. As you all know by now, and for those of you tuning in for the first time, my show, Shuvra Deb with you, is about raising awareness around the topic of mental health. I want us all to be living in a society where looking after our own mental health and the mental health of those we love and care about is no longer stigmatized, as is currently the case in society. I want us all to live in a world where we no longer make the distinction between mental and physical health, and where each and every aspect of our health is considered in an inclusive and holistic way. Whilst my show is about raising awareness around the issue of mental health, I do want to make it clear at the very outset that I'm not a mental health professional and I'm not a medical doctor. If you do need to seek professional help, then I wholeheartedly encourage you to do that, and we have a good number of options here in the Cayman Islands that you can reach out to for support. Infinite Mind Care provides counselling services and can be reached on 926-0882. The Alex Panton Foundation offers support to people up to the age of 30, and their information is on their website, alexpantonfoundation.ky. Loud Silent Voices provides mental health support, and their number is 922-3847, and their email is info@lsv.support. And as always, I love hearing what you guys have to say about my discussion topics. So please do reach out to me, get in touch with me with your comments, your questions, your feedback. If there's something that you'd like me to talk about, then please let me know. You can get me on my email, which is shuvradeb82@gmail.com. That's shuvradeb82@gmail.com, spelt SHUVRADEB, the numbers 82@gmail.com. Getting on to the topic of today's show, self-care, I want to discuss retreats. So, what is a retreat? At its core, put at its simplest, the word retreat means to withdraw, to move back. It is the act of moving back. Going on a retreat provides the space in which to draw back, to retreat from our day-to-day lives. Going on a retreat is not, however, to escape or deny the existence of our daily lives. On the contrary, going into a retreat space is to give ourselves the opportunity to open up, to make space, better space for our daily lives. It's a form of self-improvement and self-care, if you like. In much the same way that we might go to the gym to improve our health or our bodies as well as our minds, and in much the same way that we might take an additional educational course on a topic we're interested in to improve our knowledge and understanding of that topic. By going into a retreat space, we are also improving aspects of ourselves. Much like there are numerous different courses on even one topic, using law as an example, you have courses on contract law and criminal psychology. There are also many and varied different types of retreat. At its broadest, there are spiritual retreats, yoga retreats, retreats to do with chanting, dance, Reiki, and other forms of energy work. There are retreats that are available that are centered around a particular part of your health which you may wish to tend to. For example, retreats centered around recovery from addictive behavior, retreats centered around the understanding and healing of trauma, and there are silent retreats. In fact, I'll be going on a silent retreat in a few months, which will be very interesting for a radio show host and podcaster, and someone who loves to chat. So I will let you know how that goes. My experience with retreats started in 2019, just before I moved here to the Cayman Islands. Being honest, and this may seem a bit strange, but when I went on my first retreat, I actually hadn't realised that that's what I was doing. You see, at that time, I had just qualified in Reiki Level 2 and was looking for an immersive Reiki Master Practitioner course to move up to the next level. I found a course entitled Shamanic Reiki Level 3. The retreat was being held at the most wonderful Omega Institute up in New York State, in Rhinebeck, just north of Poughkeepsie. The teachers leading the week-long course were Lynn Roberts and Stacey Gibbons. The reason that I didn't realise at the time that I was going on a retreat was that I was so focused at that time on developing my mind and my intellect that I had totally overlooked the fact that what I was in fact headed on was a journey which was going to make me focus entirely on my spiritual development. And I think I missed the point, at least to begin with, because up until that point in my life, I had been entirely hyper-focused on developing my brain, improving my intellect. I saw courses and certificates and grades as benchmarks of achievement to the exclusion of everything else. And whilst all of these types of achievements are important, they are just one aspect of a life and of growth that count, that are important. By doing something like attending a retreat, we allow ourselves grace. We are affirming to ourselves that our physical, mental, and spiritual health are of value, that we're of value. By going on retreats and taking the time out for ourselves, we are refilling our tanks. Rather than going through the motions of life, perhaps only showing up and giving 70% to our jobs, to the parent-teacher event, to a date, by refilling our tanks, we are placing ourselves in a position to be able to show up and give 100%. Having said that, I saw something really beautiful on social media written by Tyler Henry, the well-known medium in the US. Tyler Henry says, if you wake up in the morning and are only able to give 70%, and you give that 70% anyways, then you gave 100%. He goes on to invite us to meet people where they are at and to extend that same grace to ourselves. So, by going on a retreat, by taking even just a few days to be in that space, we show ourselves grace and we give ourselves the opportunity to show up as close to 100% as possible, as many times as possible. Going back to my first retreat, the one that I was treating as some kind of college course or qualification, it very soon became apparent to me that there was something way more going on, something magical was going on. My very first evening at the Omega Institute, I was taken on my first in-person guided meditation by Lynn Roberts. The closest I had got to experiencing a guided meditation prior to this had been to listen and follow meditations on YouTube. Doing this in person now, in circle with others, in a community, created a whole new and different vibe. I don't know where I went, but I floated off somewhere and had the most beautiful experience, which left me feeling relaxed, uplifted, content, and at peace. And that was just the first night out of 7. As part of my Reiki Master Practitioner qualification, I had a whole week of these daily guided meditations, sometimes twice a day. And at the end of that week, I floated out of the Omega Institute and back down to the city, to New York City. Now, I talk about Deepak Chopra a lot. You, my wonderful listeners, will recall that I based one of my previous shows on Deepak's teachings about finding purpose and the questions we need to ask ourselves and to answer for ourselves in order to find our purpose in life. If you want to listen to that, please do tune into my podcast, which will go live in the new year, Shuvra Deb with you. It will be available on demand and free to play and listen, and I'll give you information about where you can find that in due course. And of course, in the meantime, keep tuning into my shows live here on Thursdays every week at 2 p.m. Be the first to hear the show drop right here on the radio on Bobo FM 89.1. So, along with talking about Deepak Chopra, I also talk about Jay Shetty, whose podcast On Purpose is one of my absolute favourites, and I highly recommend you have a listen to him too. On a recent episode of On Purpose, Jay and Deepak were speaking, and Jay talks about retreat experiences. He talks about this in the context of how, if you're interested in and trying to get into spiritual practices, then taking the time to go on a retreat can be really eye-opening. And I've touched on this on previous shows, where I've said that sometimes taking even 5 minutes or 10 minutes or a slightly longer period to sit in quiet meditation, it can be really hard. We all make excuses as to why we don't have the time, or we find reasons, whether it's because we've got to work or do the housework or tend to the children, or whether it's that we're tired and we'd rather sit on the couch and chill with a glass of wine and a Netflix show. Hey, we've all been there, including me, and it takes work, commitment, and discipline to take our minds away from those distractions and to focus in on a spiritual practice. One of my favourite ways of getting this discipline up and running is to follow the 15-minute rule, which I talk about on my second show, which is called Standing Still to Move Forward. There, I encourage you all to take just 15 minutes a day, or even 10, to sit, put a guided meditation on or some music in the background, and just be there with the stillness. But back to the conversation between Jay Shetty and Deepak Chopra. Jay says, about this issue of committing to a spiritual practice, he says that by going on a retreat of some description, it can be really opening up. It can open us up to change and to a change in our perspective. And he says, and I agree with him on this, that it's much easier to commit to something, to have the discipline to keep doing something if we like it. It might be stating the obvious, but sometimes the obvious provides a good reminder and a nice way of getting back to basics. As soon as we're doing something we like, we do it from a place of desire, joy, and enjoyment, and ultimately from commitment. We're no longer forcing ourselves to do something. For example, the people who show up to perform in a show, be that a ballet performance or one of the many, many amazing stage productions on Broadway in New York or the West End in London or elsewhere, those performers who show up day after day, often twice a day, to do something that is physically and mentally exhausting, where they have to give it their all each and every time, where they put in so much energy into that performance so that we, the audience, feel like we are seeing them do this as if it's the first time they've done it, because it's done with that level of enthusiasm. They've got to that epic stage, that part of their careers, because they are enjoying what they're doing. Nobody gets good at something without being passionate about what they're doing. Similarly, if you want to get passionate about having a spiritual practice, in fact, if you want to get passionate about anything, you have to, at your core, want to do it and enjoy doing it. And one of the ways of fostering a spiritual practice is by going on a retreat, whether that's a retreat over a weekend, a week, or something longer. Because once you're in that space, once you're there with other like-minded people you may not have met before, you'll start to feel a shift in energy, a shift in how you feel. And you'll feel that shift because you are fully invested in being there with those people in that space. You're not doing anything else, so you are forced into being present, forced into being emotionally, physically, and spiritually available for the whole experience without distraction. So whilst it is, of course, great, and I highly recommend having a shorter practice, whether it's 5, 10, or 15 minutes or something longer, there is a lot to be said for being in a totally immersive experience. That total immersion where you are fully immersed in the retreat space, living, breathing, and being in that zone allows the real work, the meaningful changes to take place. The whole full-on immersion thing works. It works really well. That very first retreat that I went on back in 2019 was a 7-day retreat. Before heading over to the States for that week, I was a little bit worried. I was worried about how I'd get through 7 whole days doing something so different that I'd never done before. 7 whole days being vegetarian, 7 whole days not being able to have a glass of wine. Well, it was one of the best things I did. I coped just fine for the most part with being vegetarian, at least on that retreat, and with not having a glass of wine. The physical cleanse that this provided was great, and it was a great opportunity to remind myself that nothing is permanent, everything is temporary, and absolutely nothing lasts forever, including being vegetarian and wine-free. So, at the end of the week, I floated back into New York City. And as soon as I hit the city, I felt kind of out of it. I felt confused and bewildered by the city, by the energy, by the busyness, by being back in that city environment. That's how immersed I had become in the retreat. So there I was, back in New York City, one of my favorite places in the world, and I had been missing steak, and I had been missing red wine. My first thing that I was going to do when I got back to New York was check into my hotel, then head straight, and I mean straight, to the nearest steakhouse. Instead, I checked into my hotel, and I sat. I sat on the armchair next to the window, and I looked out at the city. And I actually, in those moments, didn't want to be out there, back in the hustle and bustle of New York. Instead, in those moments, I put on the heavenly mantra music of Deva Premal and Mitten, which I had just been introduced to, and I sat and I meditated. Without time limit, I sat and meditated, and I think it was for at least an hour, if not longer. And I did that because I wanted to do that. And so, I did. I got myself back to center, and then, when I was ready, when I wanted to be back out in the city, seeking out the steakhouse, I went for it. I went for it on a tank that was 100% full and ready to deal with the energies and the busyness of the city. And the takeaway from that is that in order to really get into something and to stick with it, to commit to something, we have to want to do it. And we have to want to do it because we experience a sense of joy and satisfaction from what we're doing. So if you're looking to get into spirituality, to start a practice that you can maintain in your daily life, one of the things that you can start with is to go on an immersive retreat. What happened with me, what caused the real change to take place, I think, is that I felt a change from within. By being in that retreat space, by being able to soak up the full experience, I felt a visceral reaction to the meditations and to the work that I had been doing. I felt a deep sense of inner calm and stillness. And with that sense of inner stillness, I also felt a comfort and a confidence in myself that I hadn't felt up to that point. And it's from those places of inner calm, quiet, and confidence that we make our best decisions. It's from those places of inner calm, peace, and quietness and confidence that we are able to manage our emotions, manage our expectations, and our reactions to external events and situations. I spoke on my second show about why slowing down to move forward is so important in our lives, and how slowing down, in fact, helps us to move forward from a position of strength. It's having had these fully immersive retreat experiences that I can truly speak from the heart and from experience on the truth of the need to slow down, attain that inner stillness, and then move forward with all of that magic bubbling away inside of us. Having had that first retreat experience, I found myself hooked and wanting more. The New York retreat at the Omega Institute was in October 2019. And what happened for us here in Cayman, what happened in March 2020, just 5 months after that, was full-on lockdown. Towards the end of March 2020, the Cayman Islands closed its borders to our guests, the tourists who visit us and those who have second homes here. And we were, as families and individuals, forced into hiding inside of our own homes because of what was going on in the outside world. Thank goodness that many institutions that offer in-person retreats pivoted, they reiterated, and they very quickly started offering online retreats. As a result of that fantastic business move made by many, in May 2020, I was able to participate in an online retreat offered by Deepak Chopra at the Chopra Center in California. This was a 5-day retreat over a weekend and a few days of the week. I booked the time off work, and off I went, full-on immersive again, with my phone on Do Not Disturb, That was such a fulfilling and beneficial experience for me. And that 2020 period provided a wonderful opportunity that would probably not have otherwise been available to me and to others, which was direct teachings from the great man himself, Deepak Chopra, who ran a number of those sessions right there in my front room. It was great. And then, after we reopened, other retreats that I have been on since then have been frequent stays at the cottages in East End, here on Grand Cayman, which is a wonderful set of perfectly designed and located cottages owned by my friend Lynn Bodden. My friend Kim Wallace runs retreats from the cottages under her brand Authentic You Retreats. If you haven't already, I invite you to check them both out on social media. Kim's retreats run for around 3 days, and being away from the hustle and bustle of the 7-mile corridor, out in the East End with its gorgeous sunrises provides for yet another wonderful immersive experience. Until June of this year, all of the retreats that I had done were largely to do with energy work, the practice of guided meditations, yoga, learning about astrology, learning about Reiki, and that kind of thing. And don't get me wrong, I love all of those things, and I look forward to doing more retreats to do with these things. But then in June of this year, 2022, I decided to do something slightly different. This retreat was up in the Hoh Rainforest, which is a rainforest up in Washington State in the Pacific Northwest, on the border of the United States and Canada. The Hoh Rainforest is one of the largest temperate rainforests in the United States. What this means is that the biodiversity up there is immense, and the experience of nature that this provides is intense, allowing for another totally immersive experience. Up in the far reaches of the Hoh Rainforest, there are no landscapers, there are no bulldozers, there is no maintenance. The rainforest just is. It's its own perfect community with the trees and all the flora and fauna simply functioning in a perfect symbiotic relationship with each other. Being totally immersed in that kind of location and space for a week provided such a great opportunity to take a step back and to see just how far away modern society has come from living with nature. Rather than working with and in nature, we cut, we pluck, we prune, we preen to make nature fit in with us. That realization, if I hadn't had it already, provided a greater sense of awareness and respect for nature and for our surroundings. Now, I speak a lot about respecting ourselves in the form of taking care of our minds and of our bodies. I feel the same applies for taking care of our surroundings, the places we visit, and also the places we call home. So, Costa Rica, from where I have just returned. The journey there was nice and easy, up to Miami and then back down to Central America, which is where Costa Rica is located, just south of Nicaragua. What's so nice about the location? Well, lots of things, but from the perspective of distance, is it's not that far from where we are here in the Cayman Islands. In addition, it's such a wonderful change of scenery with some of the most verdant and lush greenery I have seen in a long time in a tropical setting. As amazing as the experience was, before heading down there, and perhaps unusually for me, I did have a few concerns about being bitten by a snake or a spider or some other creature in the wilderness. I mean, I may meditate and talk to others about the benefits of meditation, of which there are many, but that doesn't mean that I don't have my fears. I have this thing all in my head, of course, about how if I find myself in a tropical jungle with wild animals, I'll get bitten by a deadly snake or spider. It's entirely irrational, but there it is. I mean, I freeze up and I stop breathing. A person who takes guided breathing meditations, I freeze up and stop breathing if I see a dead cockroach in my house. I have to call on one of my neighbours to see if they'll come get rid of it for me. Or I have to leave it there, not look at it, and spend the whole day building up the courage to dispose of it. Ridiculous, I know, but this is what we do to ourselves in our heads. My mind takes over with its fear reaction. That mental fear reaction then has a physical effect, and I stop breathing and I start behaving irrationally. The best thing about all of this, though, I suppose, is that at least I'm aware of it, so I can start to do something about it one day. So, another fear coming on this retreat to Costa Rica was to do with language. Costa Rica's main language is Spanish. It's not English. About 3 weeks before the trip, I realised that I hadn't been overseas to a non-English speaking country for around 7 years. And I'm a person who has travelled all over Europe. I've spent many Christmases in India. I've walked the Great Wall of China and visited the temples and pyramids of Egypt. But it dawned on me about 3 weeks out from this retreat that since moving offshore, initially to the British Virgin Islands in 2016, I had not stepped foot inside a non-English speaking country. I moved to this side of the world, the western side of the Atlantic, fell in love with the Caribbean and the United States, and pretty much didn't go anywhere else in all that time, other than the UK, to see my parents and my friends. So, going to a country where English is not the main language, whilst I was more fearful of the prospect of being bitten by a deadly snake or spider, this fact about the language thing did play a little in my mind. And I was able to rationalise this one, unlike the roach thing. I was able to rationalise this on the basis that fears are natural and there are things that we can all do to overcome fears. The practical tools I turned to were to download onto my phone a translation app where I could hold up the text to the person with whom I was speaking, showing the English to Spanish translation. And I also learnt a few words of Spanish before I left. So, where exactly in Costa Rica was the retreat? I went to a centre called Blue Spirit Costa Rica, which is a retreat centre located in the Nicoya area on the western coast on the Pacific side. The intention behind the name Blue Spirit is to reflect the fact that where it is located is one of only 5 places in the world which are located in what are known as blue zones. Blue zone is the name given to these locations in the world where residents enjoy healthy longevity beyond the average lifespan of other global residents. Bluezone.com describes what sets each of these 5 locations apart. There isn't one single factor or definition for the blue zones which apply to all of the 5 locations. Instead, different factors set each of these locations apart. So, where are these places? The first location is the Barbara region of Sardinia. This mountainous region of Sardinia has the world's highest concentration of male centenarians. The second blue zone is Icaria in Greece. This region has one of the world's lowest rates of middle-age mortality and the lowest rates of dementia. The third location is Nicoya in Costa Rica, where I was last week. This region has the world's lowest rate of middle-age mortality and also the second highest concentration of male centenarians. Seventh-day Adventists around Loma Linda in California live 10 years longer than their Northern American counterparts. And finally, the fifth region, the women of Okinawa in Japan live longer than any women on the planet. So studies have been done about what the factors are that contribute to this healthy longevity enjoyed by the residents of the blue zone areas. Setting these out, the 9 factors are, and I'll come back to the detail, but the 9 quickly are movement, purpose, downtime, an 80% rule, plant-based diets, wine, the right tribe, putting loved ones first, and having a sense of belonging. So the first factor to longevity the study has found is movement, and particularly natural movement. The study says the world's longest-lived people don't pump iron, run marathons, or join gyms. Instead, they live in environments that constantly nudge them into moving without thinking about it. They grow gardens and they don't have mechanical conveniences for house and yard work. Now, I'm the last person who will ever say to anyone, don't pump iron, don't run a marathon, unless of course your medical advisor has told you not to or you're injured. The point that's being made here is that there is less of a need to pump iron and run marathons in these blue zones. Having visited Nicoya in Costa Rica this last week, which is in one of the blue zones, it's easy to see how residents live in a more symbiotic relationship with nature, with the land around them. They walk. There are hills, some of them are very steep, which they walk up and down. For many, life is more simple than in most of the Western world with all of our conveniences. People grow their own food and they do their own gardening in these blue zone regions. Having said that, Blue Spirit, the retreat centre that I intended, has the most amazing longevity centre located within its grounds, where it's possible to go and get various tests done. One of the tests that I had done was a biological age test called an epigenetic biological age test. My chronological age, that is the age according to when I was born, is that I'm 40. The test showed that my biological age, on the other hand, the actual age of my body, is 31. Now that's something I'm naturally immensely thrilled about. But what this test did also throw up, and that's why these tests are great, is that I have a potential future health issue that I need to look out for, in part due to my genetic makeup. That potential health issue can in large part be alleviated by me eating more protein and doing strength training. So pumping iron is definitely no bad thing at all, and especially so when done under medical advice. For those of you interested in these kinds of tests, it's called an epigenetic biological age test. The one that I took was a simple blood test which took no more than 10 minutes to complete, with the results being available the following day. There are longer, more detailed versions available too, the longer version being up to 90 minutes and providing a more comprehensive report. And with this, I cannot emphasize how great I think these tests are. The issue that came up for me is one that I've actually had in the back of my mind for around 20 years due to my family history. So it's finally great to meet this head on, know what I know, and be able to take steps to improve the situation before the health issue actually develops or takes hold. So rather than viewing a test like an epigenetic age test as something to be feared in the sense of not wanting to know bad things, by taking the test we're giving ourselves information. Not having information and then being hit with something seemingly out of nowhere is far worse in my view than obtaining the information as soon as we can, knowing what health issues we may have, and then taking professional medical advice on steps we can take to improve our health and to stave off those health issues, possibly from ever developing, or developing at a much later age, giving us a healthier and longer lifespan. So, if you're like me, and you want all the info and you want to be as healthy as you can be, go get this test. Go get an epigenetic biological age test. The tests don't seem to be that widely available yet from the research I've done, but they are definitely becoming more and more popular, so fingers crossed there's one coming to us soon. And if not, get yourself down to Blue Spirit in Costa Rica and pop into the Longevity Centre there. Okay, so back to the 9 factors for healthy longevity enjoyed by residents of the world's blue zone areas. The second of these factors is purpose. The study describes this as knowing why I wake up in the morning. The study comments that knowing your sense of purpose is worth up to 7 extra years of life expectancy. I love this one, 7 extra years of life expectancy. That's nearly a whole decade. Deepak Chopra says the same thing. I spoke to you about this on one of my previous shows where I talked to you about finding your purpose. Oprah Winfrey says about this, of a life without purpose. She says, if you are not in control of the development of your life or aware that your life needs developing, and you are just waking up every morning, going to a job, going through the motions, getting your paycheck, then really it's sort of like being the walking dead. And how many of us want to be the walking dead? Probably none of us, right? But finding our purpose may seem like a scary, overwhelming thing to do. Where do we start? How do we even begin to find something so big as purpose? I went into this in quite some detail on my previous show, which was the 3rd show called Finding Your True Purpose. To find our purpose, we first have to believe that we have the potentiality to find that purpose, and then the potentiality to fulfill it. And by sitting in quiet meditation, we access one of the ways we may meet that pure potentiality, that discovery, that truly held belief that we all have the potential to find and live out our purpose. Deepak Chopra says of this, through silence, through meditation, and through non-judgment, you will access the first law, the law of pure potentiality. By removing what Eckhart Tolle calls the interference of thinking, by removing that interference of thinking, we open up the space for growth, for the growth of our potential. By quieting our minds, by holding ourselves in stillness, we open up the space for growth of our potential, our true potential. By quieting the mind, the negative internal mind chatter, and by inviting in those gaps between our thoughts, And by inviting in those gaps between our thoughts to become longer, we're inviting in true inspiration. We're inviting in our true essence, which gets us closer to knowing our true purpose in life. Another way to access our purpose is through the practice of gratitude. By being grateful for what we have rather than focusing on what we consider we don't have, we start to tap into what is meaningful for us. For example, if we're grateful for an encounter with a friend perhaps, think about what aspect of that encounter you're grateful for. Were you able to help your friend with a problem that they were having? Were you grateful for the simple fact of the social connection you had with your friend? Were you grateful for being able to make them smile and for them making you smile? By finding things for which we're grateful, and then within that teasing out why we are grateful, we get closer to discovering what is meaningful to us. So I invite you to give it a try. Find something right now for which you're grateful, and then tease out the reasons behind this gratitude. I'm going to do this with you. So, this weekend just gone, I went to the loveliest social gathering. And at this gathering, I met for the first time a great number of people with whom I had previously not had any contact. In respect of this, I am so grateful for having met with and connected with each and every one of those people. Like with situations, with everyone we meet, each person we meet has a different energy, a different story, a different sense of humor, a different style. And all of that brought together makes for a melting pot of connection and of pure joy. So, other than feeling good at this gathering, what else about this encounter or these series of encounters am I grateful for and why? Thinking about this at its simplest level, I love connecting with people and having conversations with them, really getting to know what makes someone tick, what makes them happy, sad, joyful, fearful, what makes up the aspects of the entire being of that character is something I love learning about. All of these things are meaningful to me. And by tapping into what is meaningful to me, I tap into my purpose, which I consider to be to communicate and at its essence to bring joy. Another great way in which to find our purpose, and one which is less intuitive-based and more test results-based, is the DISC test. That's the DISC test, spelt D-I-S-C. The DISC method is a tried and tested system for analysing personality to establish what kind of person we are, what characteristics we have, and the intensity of those characteristics. The DISC method is a great way to work out where our strengths lie, which can in turn help us move towards establishing our true life's purpose. In brief, the D in DISC stands for dominance, and people with D personalities tend to be confident, placing emphasis on results. D people like to be in charge, are driven, and get things done. If you're a D personality, you make things happen. The I in DISC is for influence. People with I-type personalities tend to be open and place more emphasis on relationships with people. They like to influence and persuade others with their ideas. If you're an I-type of person, relationships with people will take priority for you over tasks. Whilst both relationships and tasks are important to you, your natural priority will be given to relationships with those around you before you turn to your tasks. S represents steadiness. People with S-type personalities tend to be dependable, placing emphasis on cooperation and sincerity. S-type of people prefer a slower pace, and they like to take their time to build trust and relationships with people. Security and stability are the traits that S-type personalities place importance on. And the C in DISC stands for conscientious. Those with C personalities tend to place emphasis on quality, accuracy, and competence. C-type people like to ensure that products and services are performing efficiently and properly. I invite you to jump on the internet, type in DISC test, and give it a go, even if it's for fun. I find it's always nice to discover things about ourselves that we may not have known. Discovering new character or personality traits can open up a whole new world of experience. For example, a new hobby, or the ability to do something creative, something that we may not otherwise have done, bringing us joy. Quite often, self-limiting beliefs can play a part in preventing us from finding our true purpose. One of the ways we can touch in with finding our purpose is to do away with those pesky self-limiting beliefs. And a way of doing away with telling ourselves what we can't do is to find out what we can do. The DISC personality test really helps to steer us towards knowing what we can do by evaluating for us and showing us on paper in black and white where our strengths lie, where the enjoyment in life lies for us. It shows us what we are good at, even if we don't really know ourselves yet what we are good at. Perhaps as a result of years and years of negative self-talk, or having had negative talk thrown at us in our formative years, we have, some of us, lost sight of the amazing people we truly are, of the skills and qualities that we all have which are unique to us. There are loads of free DISC tests out there, so go on, give it a try. Let's go back to the 9 factors for healthy longevity. The study undertaken on the blue zones being where residents enjoy longevity and other good health factors, says that downtime is a contributing factor. The study says, even people in blue zones experience stress. Stress leads to chronic inflammation associated with every major age-related disease. What the world's longest-lived people have are routines to shed that stress. Okinawans take a few moments each day to remember their ancestors. Adventists pray, Icarians take a nap, and Sardinians do happy hour. I love that happy hour one a lot. And if I was in Nicoya, I would be taking daily beach walks along their beautiful, expansive and all but empty beaches. In fact, I try to do that here along our beautiful 7-mile beach. My regular listeners out there will know that I love a bit of downtime. My favourite way of ensuring that I get that downtime is by practicing my 15-minute rule. That can be 15 minutes in the morning as soon as you awake to meditate. It can be 15 minutes whilst you make and eat your breakfast to start or continue a project. It can be 15 minutes at the end of the day to quiet your mind by picking up a good and uplifting book to read in bed before you fall asleep. It can be a 15-minute walk around the block at lunchtime, or a 15-minute walk around your neighbourhood after dinner. It can be pulling the car over and taking 15 minutes to watch the beautiful sunset on your drive home from work. All of these practices provide simple ways of slowing down just a little, of finding that downtime to recharge yourself, to quiet your mind, and according to the Blue Zone studies, to increase your lifespan. The 4th factor for longevity cited in the Blue Zone study is a 2,500-year-old Confucian mantra, which translates as the 80% rule. The mantra is Hara Hachi Bu. Hara Hachi Bu. Doesn't that just sound so lovely? Hara Hachi Bu is to be said before a meal. It's a reminder to stop eating when our stomachs are 80% full. BlueZones.com says of this that gap of 20% between not being hungry and feeling full could be the difference between losing weight or gaining it. People in the Blue Zones eat their smallest meal in the afternoon or early evening, and then they don't eat for the rest of that day. Now, this is capable of translating as eating the right portion of a healthy, balanced diet. Knowing how many calories to eat and the food groups from which to eat those calories can make all the difference between weight loss and weight gain. The nutrition aspect of health and longevity is something I discussed last week with my friends Ian and Stella from F45 here in the Cayman Islands. As I've said, my podcast will launch in the new year, and you'll be able to go in there and have a listen to that interview if you haven't already. We had so much fun recording that, and you'll be able to hear Stella talk about nutrition there. The 5th factor is to eat a plant-based diet. Now, this is the one I struggle with the most, and I'm not the best person to speak to you about this. I love meat and I love fish, and my recent health findings telling me to eat more protein have me grabbing more for the steaks and chicken and sandwiches and salads with steak and chicken in them. So I'll tell you what the study says, and I'll leave it there as that's fair given my views and practices. The study says about plant-based diets, beans, including fava, black, soy and lentils, are the cornerstone of most centenarian diets. Meat, mostly pork, is eaten on average only 5 times per month. The 6th factor to longevity, and I love this one, is apparently wine. The Blue Zone study says that following about this. People in all blue zones, except Adventists, drink alcohol moderately and regularly. Moderate drinkers outlive non-drinkers. The trick is to drink 1 to 2 glasses of wine per day, preferably Sardinian wine, it says, with friends and or with food. And no, you can't save up all week and have 14 drinks on Saturday. Whilst this one makes me giggle the most, I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's a very, very personal thing, but I find that even 1 glass of wine in the evening leaves me feeling groggy and dehydrated the next day. And of course, for someone who has an unhealthy relationship with alcohol causing problems in life, please don't follow this one. I have to say that I feel the most energized and healthy when I go for long periods with no alcohol at all. But as I say, this is a personal choice, so I'll leave it up to you. The 7th factor for longevity is to have a tribe or a social circle, according to the study. About this, the study says, the world's longest-lived people choose or were born into social circles that support healthy behaviors. For example, people in Okinawa, in Japan, create groups of 5 friends who commit to each other for life. I can most certainly vouch for finding the right tribe or social circles. Through my Reiki circles, my meditation circles, the groups of friends old and new from retreats, and friends old and new more generally from life, I feel I have a great sense of well-being and support. And whilst that may not often by itself ensure that I live till I'm 110, it certainly makes for a more fulfilling life experience. The 8th factor is putting loved ones first, and that speaks for itself. The crux of this one, the study says, is to be as close as possible to immediate family members. Now, of course, for many people, this isn't possible for a whole host of different reasons. My thoughts on that are that we can choose our networks. We can build strong friendship networks and maintain social connection through those. The 9th and final factor for longevity, according to the study, is to have a sense of belonging. The study says all but 5 of the 263 centenarians we interviewed belong to some faith-based community. Denomination didn't seem to matter. Research shows that attending faith-based services 4 times per month will add 4 to 14 years of life expectancy. 4 to 14 years of additional life expectancy is pretty cool, especially the higher end of 14 years. And in my view, belonging to a faith-based community doesn't have to be restricted to the dogma of religion. It can be a meditation circle or a group that gets together to chant and sing mantras similar to the Buddha Medicine Group, who meet every Thursday here in Grand Cayman at 7 p.m. in Bodyworks. Or it can be a simple circle of people who sit together in prayer. So, now going back to the retreat itself in Costa Rica. In the usual course, Blue Spirit holds week-long yoga retreats. The retreat I was on was quite different and actually quite esoteric, and Blue Spirit holds a host of these as well. We did have a daily morning yoga practice. Now this is where I really wish I was with you guys in person so that I could show you this retreat space. The room in which our sessions was held and in which the yoga practices were held in the morning had breathtaking, and I mean breathtaking, views out to the verdant, green, lush mountains on one side and the expansive Pacific Ocean coastline and the beach on the other side. After that beautiful morning yoga practice, held by Sarah, practice was optional. We'd have breakfast, then we'd have a morning session and an afternoon session, during which time our teacher, Paul Selig, spelt S-E-L-I-G, would channel messages from spirit. Paul is a psychic, a teacher, and an award-winning author. Deepak Chopra says of Paul's work that it is authentic, straightforward truth, straight from the source field. ABC News Nightline says of Paul, one of the most sought-after psychics you've never heard of. So, how do we normalize this? How do we take the weird out of what seems to be the unknown and the randomness of spirit guides speaking through Paul? I think the way we normalize the concept of spirit speaking through Paul is that we see the inclusivity in it. Most of the messages that came through for us at the retreat aren't actually new and have already been told to us. For example, anything that is untrue that is told by a person, that is, a lie, is told as a result of fear. The teachings that came through Paul say that without fear, it is not possible to tell an untruth. A teaching from Paul Selig back from 2010, which is available on his website, says something similar that we were taught on the retreat I attended last week. It goes, "Now, the lies that you tell yourself about what you are what we need to talk about now. I am not good enough. I am not worthy of this. I do not love him or her because I am not loved. I do not give myself what I want because I am not worthy. And if I told myself I was, I would be in deceit. Now, this is your choice. Do you wish this is the big question." Distilling this down, we tell ourselves that we're not worthy, that we're not good enough, that we're unlovable, and that becomes a habit, a type of rote thinking, if you like. But the whole time, these thoughts, these long-held beliefs, are choices. So why are they choices? They may be choices because they're easy. Thinking and believing something that we have always thought and believed is an easy choice. Doing something that we've been doing all this time is easier than changing a behavior pattern and creating a new habit. It's easier to keep eating the bacon at breakfast every morning in spite of the damage to our health that might be doing. It's easier to do that than it is to think up of a new breakfast idea, such as avocado on toast with eggs or oatmeal with yogurt and fruit. It's easier to complain about the traffic, about our long commute, and to keep participating in that anyway, than it is to try to change the situation. For example, by asking to change our office hours, or asking to work from home a few days a week, or changing job and lifestyle entirely if that's what you want to do. Now, ultimately, and going back to those self-limiting beliefs of not being good enough, not being attractive enough, not being worthy enough, being unlovable, these beliefs are all held in fear. The fear in which these beliefs are held is the fear of rejection. Rejection by the friend, the employer, the family member, lover, or love interest. The fear that they will reject us because we're not good enough, not attractive enough. As soon as we relinquish these beliefs, we step into truth. We stop operating from a place of fear and approach life from the perspective of acceptance and of love. Look at it this way: if we have negative thoughts about ourselves and self-limiting beliefs, we will only go on to transpose those thoughts and beliefs onto others. On the other hand, if we have a sense of love and acceptance of and towards ourselves, we are so comfortable inside of our skin, our body, our mind, that it's actually impossible to have negative thoughts and beliefs about another person. So, that fear we're not attractive enough for the love interest, for example, is not a belief that can be held where there is no fear. Where there is wholehearted love and acceptance of ourselves, any refusal by the love interest is seen for what it is, that refusal is entirely their choice, made as a result of their beliefs, and has nothing to do with a belief that we may once have held about how attractive we think we are or we aren't. In another of the teachings, the guides explain through Paul that we exist in what they call a shared octave of highs and lows. It's not possible to be the light and at the same time to hold another in darkness. Essentially, what we damns us back. What we put in darkness calls us to that darkness. Paul teaches us that how we attend to these things is very much dependent on what we want to receive. We can have moral indignation and call someone evil or speak ill of them, but in doing so, we are calling ourselves to that level of vibration. So, what is to be done about that annoying work colleague, that irritating uncle, the friend who only calls when they need something and are nowhere to be seen when you need them? The clue lies in the teachings about holding things in light. A tried and tested tool I have used for many years now in dealing with this kind of situation, and it works, is that I visualize the person who may be causing me irritation being surrounded by a white or golden light. I sit in quiet meditation and I see, sense, or feel the person causing me irritation bathed in a white or golden light. And if you don't feel anything the first time you do this practice, do it again. And if that doesn't help, I invite you to keep doing it. Place that person in a white or golden light once a day for 5 minutes at a time, and it will start to make a difference to how you feel about that situation, and it will highly likely change the dynamic of that relationship. So, in conclusion, if you have the opportunity to do this, to go on a retreat, I highly, highly recommend it to you. The full-on, full immersion experience of being in the magic of the energies of the retreat, of your fellow participants, is so rejuvenating. And I get it that it may be a bit scary if you've never done it before. I get it. I had the anxiety about snakes and spiders and not speaking Spanish, but it was all so, so worth it. I opened up to and met amazing new people. I went into the unknown and was rewarded with so much learning, self-development, and joy. With that, thank you all so much for listening. If you liked my show, if you're enjoying my shows generally, then please do tell a friend. Get your friends involved. And if any of you would like to reach out to me to give me feedback, thoughts, comments, criticisms, suggestions for topics, anything, please reach out. You can get me at shuvradeb82@gmail.com. That's shuvradeb82@gmail.com, spelt SHUVRADEB, the numbers 82@gmail.com. If any of the topics I've discussed today have affected you, please do reach out to someone, whether it's a friend or a professional, for support. Infinite Mind Care provides counselling services and can be reached on 926-0882. The Alex Panton Foundation offers support to people up to the age of 30, and their information is on their website, alexpantonfoundation.ky. Loud Silent Voices provides mental health support, and their number is 922-3847, and their email is info@lsv.support. Thank you all so much for tuning in and for listening to Shuvra Deb with you. And please do tune in every Thursday at 2 p.m. on Bobo FM 89.1 for more topics related to and relevant to mental health. If any of you would like to reach out to me directly about any of the issues I've discussed, please do email me at shuvradeb82@gmail.com. That's spelt SHUVRADEB, the numbers 82@gmail.com. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening.